There is something quietly magnificent happening in your life right now. Something so subtle that the ego often misses it, yet so powerful that it has the ability to reshape your entire existence if you allow yourself to notice. You are not moving through random days filled with meaningless events. You are not drifting through time at the mercy of chance or circumstance. Life itself is speaking to you, gently, persistently, lovingly, in a language that has nothing to do with words and everything to do with awareness. And the great invitation of your life is to listen. Not with your ears, but with your inner knowing. Not with fear or urgency, but with trust. Because God does not shout, God whispers. And the whisper is woven into the ordinary moments you so often rush past. You see, most people believe that if God were truly speaking to them, it would be dramatic. It would come as a thunderclap, a vision, a voice from the sky. But that belief keeps them deaf to the far more intimate truth. Divine intelligence expresses itself through simplicity, through timing, through patterns, through the quiet nudge that says turn left instead of right, pause instead of react, stay instead of run, forgive instead of defend. God speaks through the rhythm of your breath, through the feeling in your chest when something is aligned, and through the heaviness that arises when something is not. And when you begin to understand this, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you begin asking, what is this here to teach me? Every experience you encounter carries a message, not of punishment or reward, but of guidance. When something falls apart, it is not life betraying you, it is life redirecting you. When a door closes, it is not rejection, it is protection. When a relationship ends, when a plan dissolves, when certainty disappears beneath your feet, it is often because your soul has outgrown the shape of the life you were trying to force yourself to stay inside. The ego resists this fiercely. The ego clings to the familiar, even when the familiar is painful. But the soul understands something the ego never will. Growth requires release, and freedom begins the moment you stop arguing with what is. There is a profound intelligence orchestrating your experiences, and it is not outside of you. It is within you, expressing itself through you. You are not separate from the source that animates all things. You are an extension of it, a unique expression of the same infinite field of consciousness that spins galaxies into existence and causes seeds to break open in darkness to reach for the light. When you begin to see yourself this way, you no longer feel small or abandoned. You feel guided, you feel accompanied, you feel held, even in uncertainty, especially in uncertainty. Think about how often you replay the past in your mind, revisiting old conversations, old regrets, old wounds, as if by returning there you might finally change what has already been completed. The past has no life of its own. It exists only as a thought, and thoughts are something you experience, not something you are. God does not live in the past. Life does not unfold backward. The divine speaks in the present moment. Always now, always here. And every time you drag yesterday into today, you cover your ears to the guidance that is trying to reach you. Letting go of the past is not forgetting. It is understanding that who you were is not who you are, and who you are becoming cannot emerge while you are still clinging to old identities. Your ego thrives on labels. It says, this is who I am because of what happened to me. But your soul says, I am who I choose to be because I am aligned with something greater. The ego is constantly narrating your life, interpreting events through fear, comparison, and control. The soul, on the other hand, does not narrate. It knows. It recognizes truth the way your body recognizes warmth or your heart recognizes sincerity. And when you feel that quiet sense of peace that makes no logical sense, when you feel calm even though nothing around you has changed, that is not coincidence. That is communication. God speaks through contrast as well. Through discomfort that invites you to grow, through frustration that asks you to examine your attachments, through longing that reminds you there is more available to you than the life you are currently settling for. Pain is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of sensitivity. It is a signal that something within you is asking for attention, compassion, or release. And when you stop resisting pain and start listening to it, you discover that it was never your enemy, it was your teacher. You are already enough, not because you have achieved something, not because you have proven your worth, but because your existence itself is an expression of divine intention. Nothing in nature apologizes for being what it is. The rose does not strive to be worthy of blooming. The ocean does not question whether it deserves to move with the tides. And yet the human mind, intoxicated by ego, spends a lifetime trying to earn what was never missing. When you feel unworthy, you are listening to a voice that does not belong to your true self. God does not create inadequacy. Only illusions of separation do that. Everyday life is filled with symbols if you are willing to see them. The person who challenges you is often revealing a place within you that is ready to heal. The delay that frustrates you may be protecting you from something you cannot yet see. The unexpected opportunity that appears just as you are about to give up is life reminding you that timing is not something you control, but something you align with. When you stop demanding answers and start cultivating awareness, life becomes a dialogue rather than a struggle. Forgiveness is one of the clearest ways God speaks through you. Not forgiveness as an obligation, but forgiveness as liberation. Holding resentment is like carrying a burning coal and expecting someone else to feel the heat. When you forgive, you are not saying that what happened was acceptable. You are saying that your peace is more important than your story. And in that choice, something extraordinary happens. The energy that was trapped in the past returns to the present where it belongs. Forgiveness clears the channel through which guidance flows. There are no justified resentments, not because your pain was not real, but because resentment binds you to the very thing you wish to escape. The soul seeks freedom, not vindication. And freedom comes when you recognize that every person in your life is either a reflection or a lesson. Some show you what love looks like, others show you what love does not look like. Both are valuable. Both are part of the conversation life is having with you. Change your thoughts, and you change your life. Not because positive thinking manipulates reality, but because thought determines perception, and perception determines experience. When you believe life is happening against you, you interpret every challenge as proof. When you believe life is happening for you, you interpret every challenge as guidance. The events may be the same, but the meaning you assign to them changes everything. And meaning is where power lives. Healing does not begin when the world changes. It begins when you stop waiting for the world to change in order to feel whole. Healing begins within, in the quiet decision to be kind to yourself, to release the inner critic, to stop using your past as a weapon against your present. When you treat yourself with compassion, you align with the same energy that sustains all life. And from that alignment, clarity emerges naturally. Living in the now is not a concept, it is a practice. It is the choice to be where your feet are, to give your full attention to this breath, this moment, this interaction. The present moment is where God resides, not as a distant ruler, but as an intimate presence. When you are fully present, you are fully receptive, and when you are fully receptive, guidance does not need to force its way into your life. It arrives effortlessly, like light through an open window. You are a divine being having a human experience, not the other way around. And the more you remember this, the less afraid you become. Fear dissolves in the presence of truth. When you know that you are guided, supported, and deeply loved by the very intelligence that animates your existence, you stop grasping, you stop forcing, you start trusting. And trust is the doorway through which miracles enter. God talks to you through everyday life, through the ordinary moments that become extraordinary when met with awareness, through the smile of a stranger, the quiet of early morning, the sudden insight that changes everything. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is random. Your life is a sacred conversation, and you are both the listener and the expression. So slow down. Pay attention. Notice how life responds when you stop resisting it. Notice how peace arises when you release the need to control outcomes. Notice how clarity comes when you choose alignment over anxiety. You are not lost. You are not late. You are not broken. You are remembering. And as you remember who you truly are, you will find that the guidance you have been seeking has been speaking to you all along, patiently, lovingly, waiting for you to listen. And as you listen more deeply, something subtle begins to shift inside you. You realize that guidance does not always arrive as certainty. Often it arrives as a feeling, a gentle leaning of the heart in one direction rather than another. It may not make sense to your logical mind, and that is precisely how you know it is authentic. The intellect wants proof, timelines, guarantees. The soul asks only for trust. When you follow that quiet inner resonance, even when you cannot explain it, you begin to live in cooperation with life rather than in opposition to it. You stop swimming upstream. exhausting yourself against currents that were never meant to be conquered, and instead you allow yourself to be carried by a wisdom that knows exactly where it is going. There is an intelligence within you that has never been confused, never been afraid, never doubted its worth. It existed before you learned to judge yourself, before you adopted the beliefs that told you love must be earned or safety must be controlled. This intelligence is what you feel when you are moved by beauty without knowing why, when a piece of music opens something inside you that words never could, when silence feels full rather than empty. These are not accidents, they are reminders. Life is constantly reminding you of who you really are, even when you are busy trying to be someone else. When you begin to see everyday life as sacred communication, you no longer rush through it as if it were an obstacle between you and some imagined future. You begin to honor the pauses, the waiting, the in-between moments. You understand that growth is not always visible, that roots form in darkness long before anything breaks the surface. What looks like stagnation from the outside may be deep integration on the inside. Trusting this process requires humility, the willingness to admit that the universe does not need your constant management. It requires faith, not as belief in an idea, but as alignment with a presence you can feel even when you cannot name it. You start to notice that the moments which once triggered you are now invitations. Where you once reacted, you now reflect. Where you once defended, you now observe. This is not because you have become passive, but because you have become anchored. The more you identify with your inner awareness rather than your outer circumstances, the less power those circumstances have over you. You realize that peace is not something you achieve by fixing the world, it is something you access by remembering where it comes from. There is great freedom in recognizing that you are not required to carry the weight of every outcome. Your role is not to force life into compliance with your expectations, but to bring your highest awareness to whatever unfolds. When you show up with presence instead of pressure, with curiosity instead of judgment, life responds differently. Doors open that effort alone could never unlock. Solutions emerge that planning alone could never design. This is not magic, it is alignment. It is the natural consequence of cooperating with the intelligence that created you. You may begin to sense that even your so-called mistakes were part of this conversation. The paths that did not work, the choices that led to discomfort, the detours you wish you could undo, all of them shaped your capacity to listen more deeply now. Nothing was wasted. Every experience refined your sensitivity, expanded your compassion, softened the places that needed opening. When you release the habit of self-blame, you free enormous energy. That energy returns to you as creativity, clarity, and quiet confidence. The soul always knows, and it speaks in the language of ease. Not ease as avoidance, but ease as alignment. When something is right for you, it carries a sense of spaciousness, even if it challenges you. When something is not aligned, it feels constricting, even if it appears attractive on the surface. Learning to trust this inner guidance is one of the greatest acts of self-respect you will ever practice. It is choosing your inner authority over external approval, your inner truth over borrowed beliefs. As you continue to listen, you find that your need to compare yourself to others begins to fade. Comparison dissolves when you recognize that you are not here to replicate someone else's journey. You are here to express your own unique configuration of gifts, timing, and purpose. The oak does not envy the pine, and the river does not rush to be the ocean. Each fulfills its role by being exactly what it is. When you honor your own rhythm, you step out of competition and into contribution. The more you align with this awareness, the more compassion naturally flows through you. You begin to see others not as obstacles or threats, but as fellow travelers, each responding to life from their own level of consciousness. This understanding softens judgment and opens the heart. You no longer need to be right in order to be at peace. You no longer need others to change in order to feel whole. Peace becomes your home base, not a reward you visit occasionally. And then, almost without noticing when it happened, you realize that life feels kinder, not because challenges have disappeared, but because you are meeting them from a deeper place. You are no longer trying to extract meaning from life, you are participating in it, you listen, you respond, you trust. And in this relationship, something extraordinary unfolds. Ordinary moments begin to shimmer with significance. You sense guidance not as something separate from you, but as something moving through you, expressing itself as intuition, creativity, and quiet courage. This is what it means to be awake in everyday life. Not removed from the world, but deeply engaged with it. Not seeking escape, but embodying presence. You are here to remember that the divine does not reside in some distant realm, waiting for you to prove yourself worthy. It lives in your awareness, in your willingness to pay attention, in your courage to trust the wisdom that has been guiding you since the beginning. And the more you listen, the more clearly you hear that gentle, unwavering message beneath it all. You are supported, you are guided, and you are exactly where you need to be. And from this place of quiet recognition, you begin to sense that life is no longer asking you to become someone new, but to release what you are not. Awakening is not an addition, it is a subtraction. It is the gentle peeling away of borrowed identities, inherited fears, and conditioned beliefs that once felt necessary for survival, but now only obscure your truth. As each layer falls away, you feel lighter, not because life has become simpler, but because you are no longer carrying illusions that were never yours to begin with. You notice how often the mind tries to pull you back into urgency, into the false belief that something essential is missing and must be chased, but the soul is not in a hurry. It understands that what is truly meant for you arrives through alignment, not force. When you stop chasing outcomes and start cultivating presence, you discover that life meets you with a kind of grace that effort alone could never produce. This grace shows up as synchronicity, as conversations that arrive at exactly the right moment, as answers that appear just when you stop demanding them. There is a profound relief that comes when you realize you do not have to micromanage the universe. Your task is not to control every variable, but to become a clear channel through which wisdom can flow. When your thoughts are rooted in trust rather than fear, your actions naturally reflect clarity. You move with intention instead of anxiety. You speak with authenticity instead of defense. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your outer life begins to mirror your inner alignment. You may find that silence becomes more comfortable than noise, that simplicity feels richer than excess. This is not withdrawal from life, it is intimacy with it. In silence, you hear what was always there. In simplicity, you recognize abundance. The more you quiet the mental chatter that insists on commentary and judgment, the more space you create for insight to emerge. And insight does not shout. It rises gently, like a realization that feels both new and deeply familiar. As this awareness deepens, you come to understand that your worth has never been conditional. It was never dependent on productivity, approval, or achievement. You were worthy the moment you arrived, whole and complete, carrying within you the same essence that animates all creation. When you live from this knowing, you stop seeking validation from places that cannot provide it. You stop shrinking to fit expectations that were never aligned with your truth. You begin to live as an expression rather than an explanation. Life, in its infinite patience, continues to speak through contrast, but now you hear it differently. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. What once felt like loss now feels like space being cleared. You understand that endings are not failures, they are completions. And every completion creates room for something new to emerge, something that matches the level of awareness you are now inhabiting. You also notice how compassion for yourself becomes the gateway to compassion for others. When you stop demanding perfection from your own humanity, you stop demanding it from the world. You recognize that everyone you encounter is doing the best they can with a level of awareness they have accessed so far. This recognition dissolves resentment and replaces it with understanding. Not agreement, but understanding. And understanding is where peace resides. There is a quiet joy that arises when you live this way. Not the fleeting joy dependent on circumstances, but a steady sense of okayness that remains even when life feels uncertain. This joy comes from knowing that you are not separate from the process of life, that you are participating in something intelligent, purposeful, and deeply loving. You trust that even when you cannot see the full picture, you are being guided step by step, moment by moment. And so you continue, listening more than forcing, trusting more than resisting, allowing more than controlling. You let life unfold rather than trying to outpace it. You meet each moment as it arrives, not as a problem to be solved, but as a message to be received. In this way, everyday life becomes sacred ground, and every breath becomes an opportunity to remember who you are. God has been speaking to you through every experience, every encounter, every pause and turning point. The invitation was never to search harder, but to listen deeper. And as you listen, you realize that the voice you have been waiting to hear is not distant or external. It is the same quiet wisdom that has been guiding you all along, patiently, lovingly, reminding you again and again that you are never alone, never off course, and never disconnected from the infinite intelligence that lives and moves and breathes as you. And at last, there comes a moment when striving simply falls away. Not because you have figured everything out, but because you no longer need to. You rest into a deeper knowing that life is not a puzzle to be solved, but a presence to be lived. You stop leaning forward into the future, searching for reassurance, and stop turning backward toward the past, searching for explanations. You settle into this moment, and in doing so, you discover that this moment has always been sufficient. It has always been enough to hold you, guide you, and teach you exactly what you need to know next. You realize then that listening is not an effort, it is a state of allowance. It is what happens naturally when the noise of fear quiets and the heart becomes receptive. Guidance does not arrive because you deserve it or earn it. It arrives because it is the nature of life to guide what it creates. Just as water flows downhill and flowers turn toward the sun, intelligence flows toward awareness. And when you align with awareness, you align with life itself. There is a gentle confidence that grows within you, not loud or demanding, but steady and unshakable. You trust yourself, not the ego self that insists on control, but the deeper self that recognizes truth without argument. Decisions become simpler, not because choices disappear, but because you are no longer divided within yourself. When inner conflict dissolves, clarity takes its place. You move forward without forcing, speak without defending, love without clinging. You begin to understand that nothing meaningful has ever been taken from you. What leaves your life makes room. What dissolves was complete. What remains is aligned. Even uncertainty becomes a companion rather than an enemy, because you see it now as fertile ground, the place where new awareness is born. You are no longer afraid of not knowing. You trust that knowing will arrive precisely when it is needed, as it always has.